Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we're back here today with another edition of Against the Odds, brought to you by mtggoldfish.com. Today, we are playing Tibalt in Modern. Last week's poll, Tibalt was clearly the winner, far and above the other options. I think Retreats and Standard gave it a slight run for the money towards the end of the voting, but it was pretty clear that everyone wanted to see Tibalt. So, I think we ended up in a pretty good place, considering this is a Tibalt deck. Tibalt is well known to be the worst Planeswalker ever printed. Has not really shown up in any competitive lists, and the only time it really shows up is when a pro player decides they want to make some sort of troll list, and they think it's funny to play a Tibalt over something better in their deck on video. I think Jacob Wilson did that on Channel Fireball. Regardless, I think we got a sweet list this week. As you can see, comes in at $640 in paper, 297 tickets. And yeah, let's talk about the deck. Of course, we start with 4 copies of Tibalt the Fiend-Blooded. So if you're not familiar somehow with the glory of Tibalt, it is the Multiverse's first 2 converted mana cost Planeswalker. It is 2 red mana. And it has 3 abilities. For its +1, you draw a card. Sweet, everyone loves drawing cards. But then you discard a card. It's looting, right? No, not even looting. You have to discard the card at random. So it's really risky to use Tibalt's +1 because you never know what you're going to discard. You might turn the best card in your hand into a land. It's just very risky. So it comes in with 2 loyalty, so you got a +1 in a couple turns. If you get up to 4 loyalty, you can have Tibalt deal damage to target player equal to the number of cards in that player's hand. So sort of a random ability, but I guess it's sweet. It plays off the being a cheap Planeswalker. You can pump it a couple times. Maybe your opponent still has 4 or 5 cards in their hand. Deal some damage. Finally, -6 is Insurrection. Gain control of all creatures until end of turn. Untap them, they gain haste until end of turn. So in a 2-player game, you take all your opponent's creatures. In a multiplayer game, you take everyone's creatures, and they have haste, so you get to untap them and attack with them. So that is Tibalt. Obviously, the thing you're going to use Tibalt for most often is draw a card, discard a card at random. So in building a Tibalt deck, we want to have a way to discard cards that we didn't mind discarding. That's kind of the whole idea of the deck. Like, one suggestion I got and I considered was like Gravecrawler and Bloodghast, creatures that can come back from the graveyard. But after thinking about it, I decided to go a little bit different of a direction with Tibalt, and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. So before we talk about the direction, here are the 2 key cards. We have 8 copies between the 2 of them of 3 converted mana cost red enchantments. The first one is Blood Moon. You know what that one does, I'm sure. Turns all non-basics into mountains. So this is a way to slow down the game and disrupt our opponent's mana. It is really key to the deck because Tibalt is pretty bad and our deck is a little bit slow. So Blood Moon, if we can resolve Blood Moon, it gives us more time to kind of combo off. And what are we comboing off with, you probably are wondering? Well, the answer here is Burning Vengeance. Burning Vengeance, such a sweet card. I've always wanted this card to be good. It never really has been, but it is like fringe playable and very cool. So Burning Vengeance, 2 in a red, you get an enchantment. Whenever you cast a spell from your graveyard, Burning Vengeance does 2 damage to target creature or player. So I think you can see the picture developing. We have Tibalt, discards things at random. Then we have Burning Vengeance, which conveniently comes down the turn after Tibalt. And it allows us to, whenever we cast something from our graveyard, deal damage. So the idea is we are going to discard things randomly with Tibalt that we can then cast from our graveyard to trigger Burning Vengeance and kill our opponents. All while Blood Moon is slowing down the game long enough for this to work. So what is it that we are discarding randomly with Tibalt? We have a bunch of options. First off, we have 4 Faithless Looting. Pretty simple. 1 red mana, draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards. So it's just card filtering. And then you can flash it back for 3 mana. So flashback, as you'll see on a lot of these cards, is an ability where you can cast that card from your graveyard for its flashback cost, in the case of Faithless Looting 3 mana, and then you exile it. So when we flash back a Faithless Looting, not only are we drawing 2 cards and discarding 2 cards, but we are also, if we have a Burning Vengeance or 2 on the battlefield, triggering our Burning Vengeances and dealing damage to our opponent or their creatures. So Faithless Looting, we don't mind discarding that. It's one of those cards. Sure, fine, throw it in the graveyard. We also have a Conflagrate. So this one, when I started building this deck, I wanted to include some draw 7 spells, some like Wheel of Fortune type effects, because I thought it would be a sweet way to fill our graveyard really fast, and it would also work with Tibalt's deal damage equal to the number of cards in target player's hand ability. You could always make sure that was 7 if you fired off a Wheel of Fortune type effect. Conflagrate was from that package. Because it seemed sweet, you could draw 7, flash it back for 2 mana by discarding all 7 cards, also trigger Burning Vengeance. So it was kind of a centerpiece of my initial build, but then I moved away from that plan and more to the straight up flashback plan. So we don't have the draw 7 spells, but I still left one in. Desperate Ravings, this is another one of the key pieces to our deck. It is 1 in a red for an instant, which is key. You draw 2 cards, then discard a card at random. It's kind of like Tibalt is an instant. And then you can flash it back, so cast it from the graveyard, for 2 blue mana, and then you exile it once you flash it back. So this keeps us cycling through our deck, it keeps us filling our graveyard along with Tibalt, and it provides that damage for Burning Vengeance whenever we flash it back. Think twice. Down in the bottom right, pretty simple. Draw a card at instant speed for 1 in a blue. Then you can flash it back, dealing damage with our Burning Vengeance for 2 in a blue. So it's just another good flashback spell that keeps our hand full. And finally, 1 copy of Flame Jab. Flame Jab is kind of our finisher. Flame Jab, as you can see, has a different mechanic on it. It is not a flashback card, it has Retrace. So Flame Jab, 1 red mana, deals 1 damage to target creature or player, but then it has Retrace, so you can cast it from your graveyard by discarding a land in addition to paying its mana cost. So, say we have 3 or 4 lands in our hand, we have a Burning Vengeance on the battlefield and a Flame Jab in our graveyard. We can repeatedly cast the Flame Jab as a Lightning Bolt by discarding a land, because we'll get 1 damage from the Flame Jab itself, and then we'll get 2 damage from the Burning Vengeance. So this is our way to close out the game. We will draw into it eventually as we're doing the random looting with Tibalt and Desperate Ravings and Faithless Looting. Sooner or later we'll hit that and be able to burn our opponent out by discarding our excess lands and retracing the Flame Jab. So those are the cards that we don't mind discarding. That's why they're in their deck, is because they are fine to be discarded at any time. In fact, when we have one of our random discard spells, like Tibalt or Desperate Ravings, these are the cards we want to discard, so that is why they are here. The rest of the deck, we have 4 copies of Remand, counter target spell, but instead of going to the graveyard, it goes back to its owner's hand, and we get to draw a card. So this is just a tempo play, and like a lot of cards in our deck, it is making sure our hand stays full, and we're constantly cycling through our deck, finding those Tibalts and Burning Vengeances and other card draw spells. 4 copies of Serum Visions, 1 blue, you draw a card, it's a sorcery, and then you get to scry 2, so it's sort of like a inverted Preordain, basically. I'm sure you probably know what it does. It's one of the most played cards in Modern, the best cantrip in Modern at the moment. 4 lightning bolts, just 3 damage to any one target, according to the alpha version, but 3 damage to a creature or player for 1 red mana, instant speed. And then finally, since we're casting spells from our graveyard, we have 3 Snapcaster Mages. So the sweet thing about Snapcaster is turns all of our spells into Burning Vengeance triggers. So if we, God forbid, discard a Lightning Bolt with Tibalt, or use a Lightning Bolt, we can use the Snapcaster, flashback the Lightning Bolt. Not only do we get the 3 damage from the Lightning Bolt, we would get 2 damage from each Burning Vengeance we have on the battlefield. We can also trigger Burning Vengeance by flashing back Remand or Serum Visions. So Snapcaster turns all these spells into spells we can cast from our graveyard as well, and that is the main reason it's in the deck. So yeah, that's the list. As far as the lands, pretty straightforward. 1 Desolate Lighthouse, 4 Flooded Strands, 6 Islands, 2 Mountains, 4 polluted deltas, and 4 steam vents. As you can see, even though our deck has more red mana symbols, our basic lands are weighted more toward islands, and that's because we have those 4 main deck Blood Moons that we are using to try to slow down the game. So we want to make sure we can fetch out islands, and then, because then once we resolve a Blood Moon, all of our non-basics, all of our fetch lands, our Desolate Lighthouse, and our steam vents are just mountains. So we want to make sure we aggressively fetch out islands in the early game to make sure we have access to blue mana and don't accidentally lock ourselves out with Blood Moon. But anyway, so that is our Tibalt deck. We are trying to discard randomly all of our flashback and retrace spells, get a Blood Moon and Burning Vengeance, but especially Burning Vengeance on the battlefield, and burn our opponent out with some combination of Tibalt's deal damage equal to the number of cards in target player's hand ability, and Burning Vengeance triggers, which is 2 damage whenever we cast a spell from our graveyard. So that's the idea. How successful it will be, I'm not really sure. So here's the thing, I'm pretty sure with Against the Odds, you could probably pick any red card in Modern, and as long as I could play 4 Blood Moons, I would win some percentage of matches just because Blood Moon completely beats people on their own. Like, there are some decks that just can't deal with 4 main deck Blood Moons, and we would win some amount of games with the worst red card in all of Modern just because of Blood Moon. So I think that that's a key piece of the deck, and I think because of that, we'll probably be able to win like 25% of the time. But I think the Burning Vengeance plan, why I'm excited about it, and the Tibalt plan, I think that it'll win games in our build because we have the Blood Moon to slow things down. But without Blood Moon, I think the odds of us winning with this strategy would be significantly lower because I just don't think we can do it fast enough. We're playing Tibalt on turn 2, a Burning Vengeance on turn 3, and then we're hoping to start flashing back spells the next turn, and our flashback costs, other than Flame Jab, which is retraces for 1 mana and it's really sweet, but like Faithless Looting, Desperate Ravings, Think Twice, they all cost 3 mana, so it would be really expensive to burn someone out with that plan. The other sweet thing about Blood Moon in the Tibalt strategy, which is my justification for putting it in the deck, is that it makes it so our opponents, some opponents, can't cast spells very easily, which means that they're going to have this nice full hand so we can use our Tibalt to burn them for more damage. So that's my justification for why I can play Blood Moon in this deck. So anyway, I expect we win maybe 25% of the time, but still, I think this deck is really sweet, and I'm really excited to play it. Anyway, make sure to check out mtggoldfish.com for the article from the Burning Tibalt Against the Odds. Has the poll for next week's deck, so make sure you vote in that. Also has all my other articles, tons of great articles by other people, decks, prices, metagame strategy, basically everything and anything you could want related to Magic the Gathering. And if you enjoyed the videos, take a second and click that subscribe button down there at the bottom of the screen. It would be a huge favor for us, and it lets you stay up to date on all the latest and greatest in video content from mtggoldfish.com. Thank you all for watching, and I will talk to you soon.